brought to you by Charity Mobile, the phone company that supports life and family. 5% of your monthly plan price goes to your favorite charity. Buy the way you believe at CharityMobile.com and use promo code TRADITION. A couple of weeks ago, it was my great pleasure to give you some legitimately good news in the church. There was a victory for decency, and it's like what I call the video, a victory for decency in the church. The U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops took an extraordinary step. They cut 7 staff positions from their Department of Justice, Peace, and Social Justice, or whatever it's called. It was a department of the USCCB that takes federal grant dollars and a lot of your tithing money and funnels them to all sorts of political activist work, all in the name of the corporal works of mercy. And some of these corporal works of mercy were corporal works of mercy. For the most part, this stuff was pretty high-profile stuff that, given the political climate in the country and things happening at the end of the year here, it was probably a really bad idea to keep this stuff going. This is happening at a time when the Lepanto Institute has been advocating for and lobbying the bishops to stop funding these things. The Lepanto was trying to get them to cut the Catholic Campaign for Human Development, which is the most egregious example of this, and they did not do that. But they did cut a lot of programs attached to it. That was good news for us, for those of us who want the church to act like the Catholic Church again, instead of acting like a political organization. But unfortunately, there are some archbishops and bishops who were not very happy about that. So we turned to a story where one of them wrote an article for America Magazine, because where else really, where they complained about this. And they talked about how this is essentially turning the church's back on the gospel mission of the church, which is an incredible thing to say. Headline from America Magazine is, Archbishop Wester, the U.S. bishops are quietly cutting our sacred social mission, working for the poor. Ah, yes. Sacred. What you're about to hear is what separates an Orthodox view of Catholicism and the corporal works of mercy from that view held by the Modernists. They reduce the faith to the works of mercy. After all, as Pope St. Pius X teaches us in his anti-modernist writings, modernism is a synthesis of all heresies, and a view of salvation as being works-based is heresy and rejected by the Catholic Church officially. We are commanded by our blessed Lord to do good works, but there is much more to salvation than doing good works. You cannot work your way to heaven. The Modernists do this because their faith is immanentist, meaning is based on the inward feelings and experiences and shared experiences among the believers. It's extremely subjective, and as a consequence, when Jesus tells us to do works, because the actual faith part of salvation is so subjective to the modernist mind, good works are the core of faith for many of them. After all, doing good works makes you feel good, doesn't it? And doing what Jesus told you to do makes you feel good, doesn't it? Wonder how they feel about fasting, though. Usually fasting doesn't make people feel too good. But I digress. You're going to hear a lot of that here, this immanentist kind of idea, dressed up in the works-based salvation error of the modernists. You see, a bishop here is very, very disappointed that the U.S. bishops recently axed their social justice programs. That was done because of a lack of funds in part, but also because of the work of many faithful Catholics, including the Lepanto Institute, in exposing how corrupt these programs are. Your tithing dollars, along with government grants, go to fund anti-Catholic programs in the name of the Catholic Church and her social teaching. And this bishop is upset that the programs are toast. The bishop is, again, John Wester, the Archbishop of Santa Fe, New Mexico, and he's a Bergoglian himself, so this won't surprise anybody that much. From the article, quote, when Jesus goes public with his ministry in Luke chapter 4, his first words are about his social mission. Jesus stands before the crowd and announces that he has been anointed to bring good news to the poor, to proclaim liberty to the captives, sight to the blind, and to set free the oppressed. He reinforces this mission again and again in the Gospels and makes it clear. This is our mission too. In Matthew chapter 25, Jesus not only commands us to care for the least of these, but states the criteria for inheriting the kingdom of God is feeding the hungry, caring for the sick, and welcoming the stranger. This has been the church's mission for 2,000 years, so we ought to take any diminishment of it very seriously. The recent announcement of major layoffs at the Department of the U.S. bishops dedicated to the social witness of the church undermines that mission, end quote. Note that he says criterion for salvation is works. That's a heresy if he means it the way it sounds. Works are part of the price for salvation. They are one criterion. Jesus actually tells us quite a lot of what the criteria are, because there are several. The others are keeping Christ's commandments, loving God, loving your neighbor, believing and following the gospel, and obeying the duly appointed authorities of the church, picking up your cross and carrying it, and working out your salvation with fear and trembling. He left a bunch of things out, actually, the Archbishop did, but that's okay. According to him, the effort of the bishops to end the misuse of church funds for scandalous programs violates the church's teachings and Christ's commands. Let's let him talk about this a bit more so you get a better idea of the error here. Quote, I have been a member of the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops for more than a quarter century. I have been proud of the way the bishops of the United States have carried out our mission by standing with the poor, working for justice and pursuing peace. We have done so by sharing and applying the teaching of the gospel and the principles of Catholic social teaching as pastors, teachers, and leaders in our Catholic community of faith. Unfortunately, with all due respect to the leadership, I believe the USCCB is quietly taking extraordinary actions that curtail our sacred social mission. My purpose in writing this column is not to attack anyone, but to assure Catholics that many, many bishops are advocating for robust justice and peace work within the conference. Furthermore, I hope and pray the leadership of our conference will be more transparent about what was actually done, and that we will find meaningful ways to reaffirm the Church's work for the poor and for justice. In mid-June, U.S. bishops gathered in Louisville for our biannual assembly. The Bishops' Anti-Poverty Program, the Catholic Campaign for Human Development, was on the agenda for discussion due to the substantial financial issues the campaign faces. After the bishops' vocal support for the program at the meeting, the president of the USCCB, Archbishop Timothy Broglio, said that, quote, the bishops' ongoing commitment to the vital work of fighting poverty was clear. 2 weeks later, we learned in the media that the USCCB terminated at least 7 program staff from the Department of Justice, Peace, and Human Development. We know that the additional positions were eliminated through resignations and transfers. This department oversees the Catholic Campaign for Human Development, but its reach extends far beyond it into areas of education, outreach, and advocacy for the Church's social mission. Yet most of my brother bishops and I received no financial justification for the cuts. After my 26 years as a bishop, I am appalled that the USCCB would undermine a vital function without a process involving consultation and transparency. After the bishop's strong support of our social mission 2 weeks prior, how did this happen? Who decided this? Why the lack of transparency? What is the total staff capacity? All positions that is being eliminated, and what will remain? What is the financial picture that justifies these cuts? And why are the cuts focused primarily on the justice and peace work of our conference? End quote. Now, Archbishop Wester goes on to assure the readers that there are still bishops in the U.S. dedicated to this work. He never quite goes out and admits this, but there's an elephant in the room looming over all of us. There are really a couple of them. The first is simple. The laity have stopped giving their tithing dollars. You may have noticed that the Catholic Campaign for Human Development collections at your parish, not a lot of envelopes in those collection baskets. That's kind of the elephant looming here, the first one. The second one, and we have to tread carefully when talking about this, thanks to the totally fair and totally free nature of our hosts on any platform you're watching this on. You may have noticed that there's a huge political contest happening in America right now. It'll be resolved in theory later this year, in, early November. And one of the big issues is one that is central to the people of Texas and Arizona, most especially. But the U.S. more broadly. See, Americans are very fed up with a certain kind of problem, with a bunch of, we'll call them people who just kind of got here and have taken advantage of the system. The church and its nonprofits have been found on the wrong side of this issue overwhelmingly, given how the political trade winds are blowing in America right now, because they're not blowing in the direction of people embracing the situation and allowing it to fester, grow. People are very, very upset about the situation in Texas and Arizona, and more broadly what it's doing to the country and the consequences of it. And the Catholic Church's name keeps getting brought into the debate. I guarantee you that the cutting of that program that he is so lamenting was done at least in part because the public opposition is growing to the Church's involvement in that problem. And it's frankly a very bad look for the Church to be undermining the stability of the country, because that's what they're doing by participating in this through their mechanisms of the nonprofits. That's what they're doing. Now, a lot of these nonprofits relied on that organization, and they don't have the money for it anymore because you stopped giving money. But also because I suspect that many of these bishops are kind of aware of the trade winds, kind of the direction the political winds are blowing, and they're preparing for a much less friendly turn of events towards the cause that they've been allowing to happen than has been the status quo for the last few years. It's probably a savvy move on their part to stop this now. Now, that's not going to stop certain bishops from protesting this. This was sort of a look into the beating heart of modernism, where the faith is conflated with political activism. In what way do you expect to see them to try to bring these programs back in the near future, especially if things don't go the way most of us kind of think they're going to go in the fall? Are you surprised that the bishop was upset about this? Let me know in the comments, please. Are you surprised that a modernist bishop is upset about the lack of funding for these programs anymore by the church? Let me know what you think about this in the comments, please. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't. It does help. So does sharing this on social media. That helps too. And as always, pray for the church. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.